What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today we have with us Jeff Davis. Jeff is the managing partner of Bridgestone Capital. And Jeff, would you just mind sharing with us the story of your personal Ground Zero moment and some of the things that you've learned from that along the way that have helped you to get to where you are today?
Yeah. So what I think that would be would probably be the 2008 financial crisis. I was working, we had a 3-month-old working. I was like basically a data entry guy. We had saved up everything, put down on a house. We bought just like the perfect house in the neighborhood is Bridgestone West, hence Bridgestone Capital, by the way. And so we found this house, we got it, we did everything right, 20% down payment. And, about a year later is when that crisis hit, right? And I can remember Hank Paulman, right? The Secretary of Treasury comes out and says, we're about to see the worst recession, and our value in that house, our equity went down tremendously. So what was a $120,000 house was now like 90. And I can remember my wife saying, like, we just lost all this money. And the neighborhood began to shift because all these investors were coming in. They were just scooping it up, because why not, right? $120,000 house for 90, and they're even getting it cheaper than that. And they were buying them off the shelf. And we weren't trying to move. I didn't have anywhere to go. I had a desk job, and she did too. We had a 3-month-old baby. He's probably 8 months old by that time. So what ended up happening is I just said, man, I will never be in this position again. I want to be one of those guys buying houses. I want to be able to buy this house. I want to know what they did differently than what I've done. Because that's great, man. I had this 401k, and I put down the money on the house, but all these dudes are killing it, and they are buying houses. Now, I didn't know who they were. I just see them going up and renters moving in the neighborhood that we lived in. And I went to a seminar, local here in Houston, real estate seminar. And then I paid for the weekend warrior camp, right? The $500 weekend warrior, learn everything you need to know. And it was a real mind shift of thought process versus, the W-2 passive income. And at that point, I didn't sign up, but I did take away a lot of knowledge from that point. And I came home and I told her, we are going to be getting into rentals. And after that, we're going to do apartments. Because I said, did you know that people buy apartments? I remember telling her. She's like, this is insanity. So we just continued on, and about 6-7 years later, right, I had to keep working and saving stuff up. I continued to learn what I could by book, and finally we bought the house that I live in now. I kept that house as a rental, and was finally in a position where I could do these things. I moved up in my career, so I've had that rental. I ended up refinancing and buying another one, did some hard money loans, bought another rental, and over the next 6-7 years, continued to buy rentals, do flips. I did some assignments, some wholesaling, hard money loans, and last year was able to exit out of everything. And that's how I got into the multifamily. So I watched a couple of friends and guys who were my hard money lenders on my side. They've been buying apartments all last year. And so they got me into one of the groups that I'm in now. But that's the long story of my Ground Zero. Let's see. I was watching all my equity, right? Everybody talked about equity. And I remember saying, "Hey, we didn't lose anything because we're not selling, but it doesn't feel good." I know it doesn't feel great. We ended up cleaning up on that house. We cleaned up. I'm not looking, it was a lot of money when we finally sold it last year.
No, that's awesome. I love hearing about the journey and just kind of like, like I really love the whole premise of like, this is where I was at my kind of, we'll call it worst moment. And like, now this is where we are now. I love to hear just the different stories of everybody that comes on the show, explaining like the different things that they've done to achieve different levels of success. One of the first questions I thought of, just kind of coming from your story, was kind of like, what was it like in your personal situation where, like, I know you said you had a young child, you had, a house that just lost all of its equity, and now you got introduced to this kind of whole new world of investing, of spending money, and just kind of this whole new mindset. What, no, not what, how were you really able to kind of change your perspective at that time? And then what was the first thing you did when you took a step in that new direction?
Um, so hearing it and learning it and agreeing with it are very different than putting it into action. So that's where I could have done better, because I mean, I was sold on all the idea, right? Understanding the tax benefits of being full-time investor, understanding being in control. Uh, I still could not let go of the security blanket of work, and maybe, probably for the best. I probably needed that security blanket. I still had a lot to learn about business. Um, we had a growing family. I don't know. I wasn't ready to burn the boats, as they say, right? Like Cortez when he went into South America. I'm at that moment now in my life. Like, burn the boats. We are going, because I have seen it. So what I would say is, it's taken me a while, even receiving rental checks, seeing how I make more money in real estate than in any other venture. And then seeing how we can work together. I mean, I'm doing a hard money loan for a rehabber who's a great friend of mine. And then, I get to work with the people I truly like and want to hang out with. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship. It's taken a while, even though I learned it, I saw it, I agreed with it. It was a very slow process for me to apply it in bulk. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, no, you did. No, I think it was good. I think that one of the things that comes to mind, like on that last point, was that something that I've come to realize recently is there's a large difference between patience and procrastination. And more or less what I mean by that is like something that I've caught myself doing numerous different times. Kind of like what you were talking about, is where you're kind of in that stage where you're like, I really like this idea, but you're still not ready to kind of like take action on that thing. And what I sort of mean by that is like, you frame this whole thing up in your mind, but you still, for whatever reason, can't move forward towards achieving whatever that goal is that you set for yourself. And that's where you kind of give yourself an excuse per se, because you'll say, oh, well, I'm just not ready. I'm just waiting for the right time. I'm just, taking a little bit longer to understand this a little bit more, whatever it is. And you call it patience. But in all reality, you're just pushing off that thing because you're either scared or nervous or whatever it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it's
Right.
new. You've never been there before. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even know what you're doing, and that's okay. But the point is that like you set that thing off and you push it aside because you still don't feel ready. And then what I kind of want to ask you then is, when you finally got to that point, like for me personally, like for me to start moving in the direction I wanted to go, I more or less had to get, what's the right word? Like I had to get unhappy enough with my current situation before I finally had the motivation to take the action to move into a new situation. So, what I'm kind of asking you here is that, like, in that personal situation, when you finally got to that point where you were ready to burn the boats per se, like, was that just out were you tired of waiting? What was it that truly triggered you to then finally realize like it's time for me to take action?
Well, because I'd already taken action, right? It's not like it's it's nothing that's not proven in my own person. We can all read a book. We can see stuff on Google or YouTube about some dude who is living his best life, and we can relate like, I don't know if I could do that. I had done the thing. I have seen the success for my own personal life and family and benefits. The question for me was, what is the problem that I don't want to do this more? Why, why do this on a single family when I can scale it and go bigger into commercial? Why stop at multifamily when you can actually have divisions? And the the fact is, it's already been proven to me. I've already done it. It's just the levels of what have I done, and I'm getting into these new kind of atmospheres that I'm pushing the boundaries. That's very intimidating. It's scary for sure. I remember leaving one house with another one. We were going to have two mortgages. We were freaking out. We did not know. And all of a sudden, I had a deposit and monthly rental income. Like I did not even have to pay my first mortgage on the second house. And I said, man, I think we should do it again. No, whoa, what if? It's like all of the doubt. It just kept working. It's like these things work. So that was the thing for me, is I've seen this play out over a course of time. I've also made mistakes, and the benefits outweigh the mistakes that I've made that are my fault. Because I've made some boo-boos. I will admit that. I've done enough things that I've made enough mistakes that I've still come out on top.
No, I love that. I really think that like mistakes and failure is a big thing that we talk about here just because like so many people have the wrong idea about what that really means. And I'm assuming like which is something that I want to ask you about. I suppose I'll just go ahead and ask it now. That like in those failures, would you say that like the biggest failure that you made was also the one that you learned the most from?
Yeah, because I preach to it when I talk with people, and when I'm somebody who's interested in having a rental, and he'll tell me what avenue he's going to go to, and I'll say, no, don't do that, and here's why. Or here's, somebody has actually called me, hey, my tenant wants to do this. What do you think? Yes or no, or here's what I would do. And I can give those real examples. It's not a ride, just smooth sailing. It is definitely a business with its own set of challenges. And probably it's not something that nobody in the real estate space hasn't encountered. So if you're trying to do something, you can reach out to somebody. But definitely learning experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things that's helped me in where I am in my current journey, just in like those conversations, like you said, like if you're trying to do something, there's people that you can reach out to. And even if you don't know them, like I'm a prime example of this, like that you can reach out to people and ask them for advice. And you'll be surprised how many people would actually be willing to give you advice.
Yeah,
And
it's a
I've talked
true
about
story.
that. I've
It's a
talked about
very
that a
true
bunch of
story.
times on here. Like I have come into contact with so many people that I probably never would have had the chance to meet or even known had any idea who they were, just in the sense of like being willing to ask for help and then being connected between people that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I mean it's taken me further than I ever thought I'd go, that's for sure. And obviously we can only go up from here. So it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes from here. But that's what I mean, like just in like learning from that and then being able to show live results of like this is why that didn't work and this is why you need to do it this way, I think is huge. And like one of the biggest things I've learned about failure is that like often the biggest ones, like we're speaking about, are the ones that hurt so much you will never in your right mind do them again.
Yeah.
And and
Yes.
that's
Yes. Yes. Um, and the other part, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
no, no, you're good. Go ahead.
So that is very true. The painful ones, there's an investor friend of mine. I almost consider him a mentor. We've talked for years, and I know he's going through one right now. And the other part about reviewing your failures is understanding, taking the accountability. Here's the decision that I made that caused this pain, that made this go wrong. And as soon as you do that, you're the reason, and accept a decision that you made, then it is much easier to change that. You can even go as far as to say the ones that hurt the most. I kind of trace it all back to what could I have done differently to make this not happen or not happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that everybody says hindsight's 2020. So like it's easy to look back after the fact and say like, oh yeah, well I could have done that a whole lot better, or oh I could have done this a whole lot differently. Like it's easy to do that like I said, from the outside after it's already done. But the power in that is that then you realize what you're doing wrong every time. And now you're actively thinking about that when you do the next one. So you're not doing it wrong again. And eventually you find that track, you find those tasks that you need to perform that equate to, that, I'm trying to think of the right word here, like the actual process that needs to be done successfully. And then you like eventually lose all of those problems and you continue to build from there. You build that foundation for yourself. And that's where I think one of the really important things that we've talked about today, that I just scribbled down here, is that the community aspect that we keep talking about. I know you've talked about a couple different like mentors, a couple different like mastermind groups that you're in and things like that. And I just want to ask you kind of like what your kind of personal perspective is on the true power of surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals and people that share a more common future with what you have rather than people that share a common past.
Um, it is very important for the very thing that we're talking about, right? Is making those mistakes, having the questions. Because I definitely don't come from a real estate family or a real estate background. I jumped into the single family thing and I did it head first. Like I got probably 3 rental checks and was like, this is, now I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to light the single family world on fire. And I was out ready and did not have a network of people. And so I was trying things, books that I read. And it's a lot different when you're doing that and you don't have anybody to talk to about why something's not working. And it could be because that book is 20 years old. It's not because real estate is new, but it's because there are changes to things. And it is good to have a somebody next to you, or somebody you can call to say, I wouldn't do that, So I definitely learned by doing, and I made mistakes, and that's been my path. And I definitely did not want to do that on the larger scale of multifamily. So joining that mastermind is extremely beneficial, because any ideas I have are validated or discredited. And I don't mean discredited in a bad way. I mean in a good way. And they also enforce, right? Is be patient, follow a process, because that's what you need to build out.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like one of the first things that I was taught, and this would come directly from my mentor, but I feel like one of the first things he taught me was like more or less to like take the advice from other people and learn from their mistakes before you have to make them yourself. Obviously, there's like some mistakes that you kind of have to make on your own, whether like that's just part of your journey. But
Mhm.
at the same time, like in networking and having these conversations with other people, like one, you want to target the people that have been where you want to go. And that's some of the power in these mastermind groups and these different like little communities that you can find online, that now you can connect with people from anywhere that have been in a situation extremely similar to the one that you've been in before. And I think that provides like young people like myself a really like interesting advantage, because everybody remembers where they started. Everybody pretty much remembers where they were when they were in your shoes, whether that's coming out of college, whether that's, working in a job that you don't like who knows? Like everybody pretty much understands where they were. And you can use that to then reach out to this person and say, like, hey, I heard your story and, I just thought it was really powerful. And I'm in a similar situation myself right now. Would you be able to, connect for 15 minutes just to talk about it? And like 90% of the time, I mean, I don't have numbers to back this up, I'll be completely honest, but I have never personally been told no. Like when reaching out to someone and just asking genuinely for some sort of advice or some sort of help. And that's where like I like to give high percentages there, but like I said, I don't have all the numbers. But like I said, I've never been told no. I mean, and it's just because I'm coming from a genuine place, letting them know exactly where I am, and I'm like saying like I could really use your help. And I'm not coming in like demanding anything. I'm just simply asking, if they're willing to give me a little bit of advice. Otherwise, like obviously I'll just go on with my day. I don't lose anything from it. But it's just like being willing to put yourself out there into that conversation with somebody who's been there before, to learn from their mistakes so you could potentially avoid them. And I think that was a really big thing for me. But now one of the things that I kind of want to bounce to is something that we talked about just before hopping on here, just because I feel like it's a really powerful conversation for somebody like currently in my shoes. Like we were talking before we went ahead and hit record today, that I'm set to graduate in a little over a month. And from more or less me telling you that fact, you kind of asked me a lot of different questions about my plan as far as like things go after that. And I think it was actually like a really powerful kind of exercise there. Just, I mean, obviously making sure that I kind of have my head on at least somewhat straight, but also in the fact that like it's crunch time. I need to know these things. And off of that conversation, you had mentioned a couple of different things from your personal story, and that's kind of what I wanted to go back to here. One of the lessons that you had told me, as like I had told you about the fact that like obviously I want to make the shift to becoming self-employed eventually. More or less after making that point, you had told me kind of about your personal story in in your experience from the W2 world and what it's been like trying to get out of the W2 world. And I just kind of wanted to ask you to share a little bit of that for anybody tuned in today.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start kind of where I was with you, right? Is when I was at your age, we're all coming out of college trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I will tell you, you're already light years ahead of where I was. Because I came out of college and had no clue. So that you're already ahead of me. I just knew that I wanted to do something that had an income to provide for me. So bully to you, man. You're already doing very well. What we were doing when we first got married, which was pretty much right after college, I we had just so little expenses, and that's making is I think it's harder for us who've been in a career in the corporate world for an extended period of time, because we've built that career over here and our income has come up, and at the same time a family and our lifestyle has changed. And even if you're kind of living that Dave Ramsey life of no debt, you still have bills, right? You're still gonna have a mortgage. And if your family's growing, I mentioned to you I have 5 kids. My grocery bill exceeds my mortgage. These kids eat a lot of food, right? And they're in sports and they're very active. So as you grow that corporate, all those corporate dollars, you're throwing those towards your family to sustain them and your life, and you're trying to invest. It is a harder jump to say, I'm going to do this and I believe in it, and me. It is when you have fewer expenses. That delta that you need to cover for your expenses from your income is much smaller. So that was my point. Is I think there's a tremendous amount of value to be learned from working from corporate America, whether it's large, medium, or small entities, getting a customer base, how their systems function, their processes, good, bad, and ugly, and bringing that to your own business and how you want to manage it, and only taking the best. You might have a career of 2 or 3 different companies, and you can take the best of what you have seen and operated and put it into your own thing. The longer you wait, the harder it is to leave those corporate dollars behind, because they get higher. It just gets higher. Life gets more expensive.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I learned through the conversations that I've had over time, and through that specific conversation, is like the power of kind of like forward thinking, where like in the books and stuff that I was reading, the conversations that I was having early on in my journey, I was hearing a lot of people say sort of similar things, that like we were here and then life happened, and then we were here and then this happened, or I wish I would have done this sooner, or whatever that was. And I think like what that kind of planted for me was more or less like, okay, so I need to sit down right now and figure out kind of like not exactly where I want to go and what I want to do, because it's really impossible to lay it all out in such a way that it's going to follow that to a T. Like, it's not going to happen, because life does happen. But if you can at least sit down and kind of lay out the things you want and the things you want to have, or like where you want to be, different things like that, like truly laying out your vision for yourself and your future as far as like your family and things go, then you can accurately plan for that. And I feel like that has been a really big thing for me, just because I've been able to say, like, to take my vision and kind of reverse engineer that to what I need to do now to get to that place. And like in saying, like, not necessarily like, this is how many kids I'm going to have, this is how many expenses we're going to have, like not necessarily in a point like that, but just of like, this is what I want to
really
have.
granular. That'd be really granular if you did that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can lay that out and stick to it, kudos to you. Because that's pretty powerful.
Kids, by the way, the 5 kids thing was not planned.
Yeah,
that's called life happening, and I would not trade that for the world. Okay, I would not trade it, and I'm very happy with. I love the fact that we started having kids early, and we have 5 now, and it's very busy and it's fun, right? I have from 15 to 9 months, and it's tremendous. I love my kids, so I do not want to convey that it's like, well, because of my kids, because I've actually been very stubborn. Like regardless, hey, the day she went into labor, I was doing demo on a flip. I have pictures of me inside a dumpster doing demo. And then, I got a text, and she's like, hey, I think it's time. Okay. Let me take a shower and bring you to the hospital. It's time. So been very kind of stubborn and bullheaded about that aspect. But I wouldn't kids for the world, man. That is my favorite part of life for sure.
Yeah, no, I think more or less what I was just kind of trying to say is where like me, like I've been able to kind of plan a lot of that stuff out, just where like I can say like where like in our, like a prime example would be our conversation before we hit record today, where like I have this vision of like what I want my future to look like financially and family wise and things like that, like generally, not like to a T, but generally. And then I can say that, if my goal is financial independence, some of these things are what I need to learn today, and what can I start working on by the day. And like initially getting plugged into some content as far as like what that actually is, I feel like it kind of gives corporate America a bad rep. And that's where I'm kind of coming back to our conversation earlier, where like a lot of people say, oh, I get stuck in the rat race and it's harder to get out the longer you're in and stuff like that. But like one of the cool things that you and I talked about before pressing record today was the actual value in working for someone else for whatever duration of time.
Yeah.
I think that like when I first got plugged into like that type of content, like I was saying, like I had this like mindset where I was like 100% I'm never going to work for somebody else. I'm starting my own company out of school, and like that's never going to be me. But as we talked about, more or less, like that evolved a little bit. I realized that wasn't quite as realistic as I had originally
Mhm.
thought. That wasn't going to make it by then. But since then, I've realized what I can learn from working with somebody else, especially if it's in the industry that you're interested in. And this is kind of where I want to go back to here. Like we talked about, like my current situation, to the point that I have the opportunity to learn a lot of really cool skills and build a really big knowledge base from, an awesome, we'll call him boss slash mentor, like because I've put myself in that position. But
Mhm.
at the same time, like had I tried to jump right out of school and go right into my own endeavor, I never would have got that knowledge. Now, don't get me wrong, I would have learned something because it probably would have failed. But but what I mean is that like you still missed that opportunity as well. And some of the things that you've talked about was that you are now applying like almost everything that you learned from your time in the corporate world into the venture that you're building now. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you to elaborate on just a touch, as far as like not necessarily like everything that you're learning, but just how you've been able to take that experience and apply it into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so my role is a global sales executive. So my job is business development, getting deals and getting deals done. So what I'm applying is kind of the infrastructure to attract new deals into our business from various different sides, and making sure that customer experience is really ideal, because I've been on both sides of a transaction in corporate America and seeing how one bad move by an operator can cause pain, and I've also seen kind of the best of the best. And so what we want to create is the ultimate positive experience, and just education, right? It's the model, AENC, educating and nurturing everybody who comes into not just our website, but our family, essentially. And I think that's the main thing I've learned about my time is I've really good relationships with everybody who's trusted me with their business, and they've trusted me for a reason, because we'll take care of them, and make sure that it's well taken care of. And if you're able to build that trust, then you honor it and you take that forward. So that's what I'm applying to my own company, is I'm just bringing my same brand over. It's always been me, and letting them know, hey, I'm doing this over here, but it's still me. We've been working together for a very long time, and it's still the trust, and you can still I still have the same values and the same performance, and I'm still measuring myself just as hard against the competition.
No, I
I
love that. I
think
love that point. That Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I think the other part is you start to learn what you're really good at. I know what I'm not good at, so I'm able to focus on only these two or three things, and I'm hiring people to operate the rest of the back end, all the computer and the software and the data entry. I'm not doing that. I'm making sure they have the process and the information they need to execute.
No, I love that. I really love the point that you made about like even despite the fact that you're starting a new venture, like going a new direction, you're still staying true to yourself and your own brand. I really love that part.
Yeah.
Um, but this has been really great. I love everything that we talked about so far, and I want to say thank you so much for being willing to come on and share the experience that you've had so far with all of us tuned in, as well as just myself personally. One of the questions that I always like to ask the guests, just kind of in closing, is if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself during what we called that personal ground zero moment, what do you think you would tell yourself in that conversation?
Oh, don't start with single family. Make the leap. It's not too big to go commercial. And just go ahead and get into commercial real estate. You don't have to start one house at a time. You can start with one apartment at a time, or one warehouse at a time, or one RV park at a time. The scalability is different. The transactions are the same. So that's what I would go back and tell myself, I guess, almost 10 years ago. Because I look at it now, I had this conversation 2 days ago with an almost investor who's looking at getting into a rental. And my advice to him was exactly that. Don't think this is the path you have to go. There's nothing wrong with it. But if your end goal is that you want to get into commercial, just go there. Just go there, and it's a much better, I don't want to say better, but you do not have the single family to multifamily is not really relatable. Only the experiences are, but the network is different.
Okay.
It's a new learning experience.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm sorry, just one more follow-up question, I guess. Like, would you say that, like, in saying that, would you say that your experience in single family was like important for you to build up the confidence to go multifamily commercial? Or do you think that that was something that, like, looking back on it, you could have actually just skipped right over?
For me, yeah, it was important because, like we talked about earlier, right? I had seen it. I've seen the success, so I didn't need anything to be proven to me. So I have seen that. My advice to myself is, you're going to see the benefits. Just why don't you just go ahead and multiply it, because it'll be tenfold, and you'll be much further along in the next 5 years. So yeah, it was a huge confidence builder, and that's all it is. So go ahead and do the single family thing if you need the confidence. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it, and I think it's fantastic. I might even buy some houses, in the next 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if I get into some flips, but they don't translate. Commercial and single family residential don't translate.
Okay. And I feel like that provides like a lot of clarity, as far as like a lot of people think, and there's even people out there like sharing things that really make it seem like it does. Like, a lot of people really make it seem like, you can, get into a few houses and then that takes you right into multifamily. But like you said, like it's weird that it's not as correlated as everybody makes it sound.
No, it's not. It's not. It's
Interesting.
it's different banking. It's different
Mhm.
financing. If you're doing small multifamily, you could probably have the similar property management, like a little real estate agency firm if you wanted. But in terms of the purchasing and all that, it's not likely going to be the same.
Right. No, I think that's a big point. Just to share with anybody out there right now looking into, kind of getting into that first investment or anything like that. But Jeff, I want to say thank you so much for being here, and like I said, being willing to come on to the show, sharing your perspective, ideas, and experiences. And just like I said, thank you so much for sharing. Before we go ahead and close this out, could we just get the best place for anybody listening in to follow up and get in touch with you?
Definitely. Just go to my website, bridgestoneinvest.com. That's www.bridgestoneinvest.com. There's no S at the end, just invest.
Okay, got it. Thank you so
It's
much
got
for
all
sharing
sorts of
that.
content on there, and tremendous educational resource on the website. And then we have
Awesome.
a monthly newsletter. It's good. I might be doing it twice a month coming up. Just a lot of information coming out.
Got it. So if anybody is tuned in right now that's interested in any of the things that we talked about, go ahead and check out his website. We'll link it in the show notes as well. Again, thank you so much, Jeff, for being here today. Always remember, everyone, this is Dream Chasers Ground Zero, and there's nowhere to go from here but up. Thanks,
All right.
Jeff.
Thanks so much, man.